Yeah, okay. Okay, feeling that. Thank you very much. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch. Great to have you back pretty much on time. Appreciate that. Look, innovation is always at the heart of progress. And we've built today around this extraordinary innovation that we are seeing in artificial intelligence. One of the most powerful factors behind this transformation that we're seeing is the incredible investment that's going on in our economy and indeed around the world to enable AI. Of course, I'm talking about the build out of the data center sector, as well as the required energy as well. It's such a huge force in the economy and markets right now. It really is the main driving force. So we've got a tremendous panel to talk about the innovation we're seeing in the space, the durability of this build out, and what we can expect over the horizon. Please join me in welcoming the panel to the stage, led by the moderator, our Director of Research, Johann Lee.
All right. Thank you for everybody joining us. I was hoping to walk onto the track with Back to the Future music, but the theme song, of course. I'll be your moderator, as David mentioned, for the Innovation and Opportunity panel. And if you don't know by now, we are in the midst of an incredible and epic investment cycle. This is one of the largest and greatest infrastructure build-out cycles in the last 25 years. It spans industries and sectors and will power the technology of tomorrow. To maybe illustrate the sheer size and the magnitude of this spend versus other past cycles, very few in history take place of this magnitude, right? If we think back, you can probably count those on a single hand, right? Prior to this, we had the shale boom of the 2010s. That was an energy boom here in the United States that gave us independence, oil independence. Prior to that, the fiber optic build-out and the internet build-out of the 1990s. And that obviously revolutionized the world, revolutionized the way we were connected around the globe and allowed a platform to build out some of the biggest and most successful businesses that we see today, spanning software, technology, and e-commerce. And if we go way, way back into the future, and for the fans, you might know this, in movie number 3, we got to witness what the railroad build-out offered. It revolutionized the way we conducted commerce and trade in this country, and it connected East and West. That's a long way of saying that AI is a technology, in our view, of that magnitude. It's going to change the way we interact with machines. It's going to change the way we conduct business and operate workflows. There's an immense amount of capital in the private markets that will take place to make this creation happen. Another way to think about the sheer size of this build-out, it's estimated between today and 2030, about 5 to 6% of overall US GDP will be spent when it's all said and done. In dollars and cents, that means about $1.5 to $2 trillion will be spent. And on the back end of all of this investment, of course, the hope will be a massive productivity boom that we'll see in the economy. So to help bring this panel to life, we are trying to identify key themes and investment opportunities that are emerging from this incredible spend. And joining me on the panel here are 3 private markets investors. We have Keith Derman from Ares Management, one of the largest private asset managers in the world, overseeing over $500 billion of assets across private credit, private equity, infrastructure, and real estate. We have Kiran Rao of Vista Partners. They are a blue chip enterprise software investor, overseeing over $100 billion in market value across 90 different enterprise software companies. And we have Carter Room of M13 Ventures. He is a venture capitalist and will illustrate how to invest early in a company's life cycle, identifying passionate, creative, and visionary founders that will help build the businesses and next generation companies of tomorrow. So with that, please welcome me on the stage, welcoming our panelists, and let's get this conversation going.
All right.
All right, we have a lot to talk about. We're sandwiched in the middle between lunch and Drew Brees, so let's keep this spicy. I know I did a brief snippet of your backgrounds and your firms, but can we maybe just a 1-minute roundabout here on your backgrounds and what you do in your specific role? Keith, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me today. Huge Back to the Future fan, although really just the first one. I kind of didn't sort of follow through with all the others. I've been investing for about 21 years now in power and energy infrastructure. Before that, I was actually in industry working in a power company. Today, as Johann said, I work at Ares. I oversee our infrastructure equity business. We invest out of two different complementary pools of capital. One being sort of a bit of a higher octane, higher returning, a tad more risk pool of capital, where we build a lot of infrastructure assets and own companies that are in the infrastructure sector. And then we also manage a core vehicle, which is very yield oriented. So it's all about getting income on a regular basis back to our investors, where we're investing directly in the very sort of essential segment of infrastructure. So power plants that run on gas or renewables or pipelines or even highways, airports, all the essential services that hopefully you're not thinking about, right? If they're all working, you're not worrying about it. And then increasingly, which we're going to talk about, certainly data centers.
Kieran.
Cool. Thank you, Johann. We were joking backstage that he's the hardware guy, big pipelines, infrastructure, cool, big civil engineering things. We're the software guys. So Vista Equity Partners, where I work, we do nothing but enterprise software, which is really the software. You may not even know a lot of these names because these are the software that businesses use to run themselves. We'll talk more about that. We think that is also sort of how AI will be distributed into the economy. We'll talk more about that. I have a cool role in my view. I'm the chief operating officer of the value creation team. So in private equity firms, we buy companies. In our case, we buy software companies. We try to add value, and we sell companies. And I'm the add value person. We have 150 people that I'm proud to work with. We're all software practitioners, and we basically go and try to add value in our companies. And off late, it's been all about how do we take our software companies and make them AI companies.
I'll go quickly so we can jump into the conversation. But my name is Carter, founder of M13. We invest early stage, and so our job is to figure out new business models, especially as we talk about AI. Our job is not to only understand where the world is going. That's pretty obvious. AI will change the entire world. My Lyft, my Uber driver, everybody knows that. But where are the value layers that are the best risk and probability adjusted that we can invest behind in the early stages when it's effectively the old kid in a dorm or kid in a garage type thing.
Awesome. All right, there's a lot to cover. Keith, let's start with you because, in many ways, you are kind of creating and assembling the highways to allow this AI to get to users. When you and I connected earlier, you mentioned how different this cycle is versus maybe years past in your 25-plus year career. Can you just kind of help us understand the magnitude of this new demand? Who's it coming from? What type of assets are in demand?
Yeah, so I don't know if you all caught it, but Kieran said that what I do is cool. And that's kind of the big difference. So, I've been doing this for over 20 years. When I would go out to dinner with my wife and other couple, there was sort of a gag order or a muzzle around me talking about my business. And that's completely changed, right? Like what we do and sort of the overlay of all things digitization and AI and data centers and kind of where the world's going and the increase in energy demand and power demand and that people actually want to talk about that. So I'm now allowed to periodically speak out socially about what I do, but rewinding I was not, right? It was like, who wants to talk about pipelines and power plants and things like that. But I've been doing this for a long time and I've been able to keep busy. And we've invested a lot of capital, and a lot of that has been done in, if you speak within the power sector, in this sort of modest environment where there was not a lot of increase in power demand. And what is happening with AI is sending shockwaves through the entire infrastructure landscape in terms of the growth in power, the impact on the grid, water consumption, supply chain, capital needs. It really is. It's unlike anything I think that any infrastructure investor, any power or energy executive has seen in their career. It's really exciting, right? It's nice to be part of the sort of the backbone of a rapidly evolving world.
So the slide behind us here, I think, kind of illustrates what Keith just said, right? The economy is drastically changing. This is a chart from JP Morgan, and what it shows is the red line, the right chart that is, the red line above there shows that demand pool of energy that Keith is talking about. And what's really interesting, and I think, a takeaway here is it's in the first time in history that data center capital deployment is actually going to now exceed the build out of office space, right? That is a big shift in the way the economy is functioning. Well, thanks for that color, Keith, and we're gonna maybe get back to some case studies on the round back, but Kieran, software enables users to use the technology, right? And you are part of a group that oversees arguably leading technology businesses. How are the leading companies evolving with or engaging and integrating AI into their service model? And what sectors perhaps are the most ripe for disruption?
Yeah. So we love software, clearly. All we do is invest in software. Software has been long the most productive asset in every sector in the economy. Okay? I'll repeat that. Software, in our view, is not a sector. Software is the most productive slice of every sector you know about, whether it's oil and gas, it's construction, healthcare. You get the idea. Now, what's happening is that we think that AI is going to feed software, right? We can talk more about this, we will. But AI is becoming kind of a new engine of productivity, and again, in every sector. Now, to your point, Johann, it's not equally distributed, right? AI does some things really well today, some things not so well yet, right? If I expound on that, it is, would you like me to?
Yeah, please give us an example of where it might be ideal.
So, I mean, you all have played with ChatGPT, I'm sure, and so on, and you know this already intuitively. There's some things that it does exceptionally well. It is really good with unstructured data. It's really good at summarizing emails. I mean, it writes emails better than I do, which may not be saying much. But it writes documents really well. It doesn't write slides well yet. It does not do spreadsheets well yet, but it will. And so I think if you just kind of apply the capabilities to what AI does in various sectors, it has already transformed the media sector. It is unbelievable at creating new visuals. I'm pretty sure that Back to the Future visual, your team probably used one of the AI tools out there to kind of customize it. Everybody would now.
You just got somebody fired.
I'm pretty sure they did, and if they weren't using it, you should probably fire them, right? So, but the reality is, look, the media sector is completely transformed, right? Agencies, Madison Avenue agencies, completely transformed in terms of how they do it. Professional services firms, take your pick. The ones who do more words, transformed. The ones who do more numbers, not yet, but it's coming, okay? And I'll keep going. Software, the way you write software, already transformed. So I went to school really, really long time ago. When we wrote software, you opened up a text pad, a text editor, and started writing code. Nobody writes code like that now. Nobody does, right? The way you write code is you pull up various ways to do it, but you might talk into your app and say, build me an app that basically takes this image and adds my logo on it. It doesn't matter, right? But you can make a software by dictating into an app now. And it does all of the boring stuff behind the scenes on syntax and things like that. So long story short, Johann, it's coming for every sector. It is coming slowly in some sectors, really quickly. It's already transformed some sectors. A great quote, William Gibson quote, the future is already here. Yep. It's just unequally distributed, right? And I think it totally captures where we are now. Some sectors already transformed, some later.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of white space left. Why don't we transition to you, Carter? I mean, this is a hot space. It's a hot topic. There's a whole value chain involved in AI investing. You're obviously at the early end. Yep. Can you talk through, what's hot and more of a fad in your view, and what are you really looking at and interested in?
Cool. I think the two things we think about, so we invest early stage. So when someone just has an idea, maybe, less than $10 million of revenue or something like that, we think about kind of two things, very similar to what he was mentioning. One is, where is the best risk and probability adjusted value layer, right? So take creativity. My wife runs $1 billion media company. So everyone brings to me foundational models disrupting creativity, right? The idea that she can make an animated TV show using an LLM and things like that. But I probably will never invest in a foundational model at my stage, being an early stage VC, because they usually have the—
I'm sorry to cut. LLM?
LLM, foundational model and AI model. Okay. So ChatGPT or OpenAI and LLM.
I thought it was a tax degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry. So take that. The valuations are high because everyone knows how disruptive something like AI will be for Madison and Avenue and creativity. Those particular business models take a lot of capital. Therefore, an investor like me who goes early stage is diluted. And what's different in this innovation cycle than past innovation cycles, I believe, is that if you think about when someone like Mark Andreessen, a famous VC, said software is eating the world, it was an implication of one of the greatest technology advances of all time. It was the iPhone. It was the implication of the iPhone is why there's so much software. And in that case, specifically consumer software, right? The reason somebody orders food on their phone or social, Meta or Instagram is all because of the iPhone, right? It's the ripple from that. And so when you think about, something, what we have to do is try to think about where we want to invest and where the right ripples are, because I would argue it's going to be hard to potentially get returns from a foundational model that is high valuation, takes a lot of capital. Versus, I'll give you one other example, and then I'll pass it back to you, is like we have a thought process where we've been investing in sleepy industries that can be disrupted by AI. I'm sure Vista thinks about it all the time. So, AI will disrupt everything. The job of investors like he and I are understanding if the technology is distributed not equally, which places do we want to gravitate towards, which value layers do we want to invest in today where we think we can get the best risk and probability adjusted returns.
That's awesome.
I really tried not to do the jargon, but as a VC, I got to be honest.
I know it's hard.
A lot of jargon.
Keith, let's bring it back to you. Again, you are kind of assembling the assets to help fuel, this technology. Can you walk us through some of the kind of assets that you're looking at? What's in demand, and how may investors invest in those types of assets, and how do they get paid?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes it's like the easiest way to think about it is to just focus on one particular type of asset. So let's take a wind project. And that wind project is going to be developed by a company or a group of people, whatever it might be, and they go through the process of getting the land and getting the permits and getting a series of contracts. And those contracts primarily are, the most important one is who is going to buy the electricity that wind project produces for X period of time. And typically you can get a contract, and believe it or not, they're actually very easy to get contracts because there's so much power demand. In particular, the big tech companies like the decarbonized power. They like wind and solar because they're renewable. They will give you somewhere between call it a 12 to 15, we're starting to see 20 again, year contract where every electron that comes out of that facility, they agree to a price. And that price may have a little bit of an escalator or it may not. And so now you can say, well, when I build this project, within a little bit of margin of error, I know how much I'm gonna make every year for 15 years. You're creating an annuity cash flow. And sure, yeah, 1 year it blows a little less, the wind blows a little less than the next year, but over a period of time, we've gotten pretty good at forecasting. It sort of normalizes. So you're going through this development process and creating this really attractive annuity cash flow. Now, these developers don't have just one project. They've got a dozen going at any time, and they're capital intensive, and they're 40-year assets, which means the return on that asset takes a period of time. So once they get a project built, they put their money in, right? They can't hold everything, right? And that's kind of the beauty of this incredible CapEx, this capital investment opportunity is everything is for sale because there's so much growth, because these developers, they get something built, they have a party, they have a ribbon cutting, they have a high five, and they're on to the next one, and they need money to build that next one. And so here we are, we come along, and we are happy to buy those projects once they've been built. And so, look, we just bought a portfolio of 14 operating wind and solar projects in the United States. They had all been built within the last 6 months, all by one company, all with 15-year contracts. By the way, those contracts are with investment grade counterparties, right? So we have a pretty known income stream, cash flow stream for 15 to 20 years. And then look, you got to make a little bit of a bet on what's going to happen in years, call it 16 to 40. Feels like it's going up, but who knows? And we're happy to buy those and own those and generate that cash flow for our investors for, essentially in an evergreen period of time. And so, and we're doing that right now at returns that are well into the double digits. So we're generating 12, 13% yield.
Yep.
For investment grade counterparty risk. We didn't take development risk, we didn't take construction risk. I haven't seen that in about 20 years since Enron went kapooey. And so it really is just an incredibly exciting opportunity. The more capital that is needed to build things, the more opportunity there is to buy things.
I think this is a great example how core infrastructure or stabilized cash flow off of infrastructure assets now goes beyond airports or toll roads or what maybe historically has been considered more boring infrastructure of the past.
It's essential services that have some form of barriers to entry, monopolistic characteristics, or long-term contracts, uncorrelated return vis-a-vis, relative to the public markets, right? Because look, when COVID happened, right, in 2020, and the world, sort of came to a screeching halt, the wind was still blowing and the sun was still shining, and yeah, maybe people didn't go to their office buildings, and maybe lots of people didn't go to their jobs, but residential, electricity, sort of boomed. So the power demand was still there, and we didn't see a blip in our returns during that period of time. So real nice downside protection.
Awesome. Kieran, let's move to you. Keith mentioned public markets and kind of catapulted me to a question. In the public markets, say over the last few months, one could say there's been a bit of a valuation pressure kind of being seen on, say, incumbent software businesses like Salesforce and ServiceNow, right? And as you said, there's a ton of white space for disruption to come because of this technology. So when it applies to kind of your portfolio and the way you see it, is it justified that public investors should be putting pressure on these incumbent businesses because the disruption and white space is so wide?
No, I think it's very, it's a fair question. I think there's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. Okay. But there are also real software businesses growing EBITDA significantly. Real earnings are also growing, right? All of it is true at the same time, which is why we have to pick carefully, right? But back to the previous point, we think that in all of these technology inflections that have happened over time, whether it was the internet, whether it was mobile, all of them start with hardware. All of them start with the chips. All of them start. My startup was acquired by Cisco 20 years ago. Remember Cisco? Remember Nortel Networks? Remember Juniper? All of these guys were laying the highways. They were laying the fiber for the internet. Something similar is happening now. We are basically going through the NVIDIA days. We're going through the data center days. It starts with hardware. It starts with data centers. And then eventually the profits flow to applications and software. We have seen that before. And we think something similar will happen now. And we're not yet in that phase. And that's kind of the answer to your question, why software companies out there, public companies, are feeling pressure. We're not public. And we think that there's 100,000 private software companies out there. And so we think there's a lot of opportunity to do this kind of innovation in the private markets. It's actually why we're excited about it. Now, can I add one more point?
Go for it.
So we've already talked about why we're excited about software, continue to be excited about it, because it's a great productivity tool for human users, right? Has been for a long time. Maybe in your own businesses, you use software, makes you better, whether it's something that a large company provides or something that a small software company provides you. It made you better as a human user. The big idea that's coming now is this notion of agentic AI. Promise you that's the only jargon I'll use. Have you heard the word agentic AI? Not too many. Okay, I'll explain. So software used to make human users more productive, always has been, right, for the last 50 years. AI is making human users more productive. Agentic AI not only makes people more productive, actually does the work as well. It's a big idea. And what this means is there are certain jobs, certain tasks that the machine, call it an agent, a virtual agent, will do better than humans. And we believe that the world is going to move to human managers managing hybrid teams. They'll have human employees and they'll have virtual agents. We're not far from that. And that will happen for certain job tasks and certain job types. It's not going to replace jobs. It's going to replace tasks, if I'm making sense. Because agents are really good at some things. Just to finish off, we think that will be software. That will be software that businesses are going to need. We want to be the ones to provide those agents to our companies, and that's what we're focused on.
I'll just give one real life example of agentic AI. One of my investors the other day said, I'm coming to LA. Can you recommend some restaurants for me and make some reservations for my wife and I? And I was thinking to myself, you probably want me investing your capital. I'm better served there. But then I was like, okay, I'll use agentic AI. So I basically used agentic AI and I said, can you look up the 15 best restaurants in Santa Monica? This gentleman's coming with his wife. Maybe do one trendy restaurant, one cool, one romantic, whatever. Then can you go to Open Table and blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't do it instantly, right? It comes back. And people sometimes will say to me, well, it's not perfect yet. And I said, well, you should have met me at 22 when I worked at Goldman Sachs. I wasn't perfect yet either, right? But it's basically what you would tell your assistant, what you would tell a 22-year-old at Goldman Sachs, right? And then they bring it back. And sure enough, in this task, they'd brought it back. They had looked at what was available. And that was like a great example of a very dumbed down version of agentic AI, just to redeem myself after I use jargon like LLMs. Can I just touch on one other thing
please.
that you said? I think the other thing that you touched on that I talk about all the time is right now we're still talking about the technology, right? So he referenced that nobody codes like he went to school for coding anymore. In my world, we call it vibe coding, right? It's all these companies that are worth billions of dollars because they've launched technology that makes it so easy to build an app where it used to maybe take months and millions of dollars, now takes minutes and that. Or we're talking about kind of other use cases around creativity. What I would encourage everyone in this room to be thinking about, and it's where he'll look to invest and where I'll look to invest, is can we get the second or the third ripples right? So like take 1920s, because a lot of this is rooted in history. The technology was the automobile, right? The ripples of that, you know who also made a lot of money? It was people who bought gas stations, right, in Keyswood. And it's people who bought real estate in Los Angeles. Those were the implications, right? So think about, if we use this example of vibe coding, the fact that anybody in this room could make an app. You could say, make me an app for my family to share photos and my favorite recipes and this. It'll take you, honestly, 5 minutes. Well, what's the ripple of that? That means now all of a sudden everyone can launch apps. What does that mean for the App Store? What does that mean and things like that? And so you also touched on it, but I think it's very appropriate that we are in the very, 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 you guys got it? Early innings of AI, right? And so there's a lot of investors, especially in venture capital, who think like they got to run out and spend all the investors' money because they're going to miss it. They're not going to miss it. It's coming, right? And so we try to be very patient because the most obvious use cases of the technology are the most overheated. I would encourage everyone to be thoughtful and think about what are the business models that we don't even know that are possible using agentic AI and productivity gains and things like that. That's when it gets exciting.
Awesome. For the sake of balanced conversation, it can't be all roses, okay? Let's talk about some of the consequences. Keith, you and I talked about this. In the process and the journey of this build out, it may be very inflationary. Can you maybe kind of touch on where we're already seeing that? And I'm sure everybody already feels that in their pockets, but we'd love you to highlight that.
Yeah, I mean, look, right, so we've had a lot of inflation for about 5 years, right? That's been pretty meaningful. You just take a run-of-the-mill power plant, it's at least double what it cost to build 5 years before we had all the, the impact of rates and supply chain and labor costs and you name it, right? And so now what you're having is kind of like this big sucking sound for all the various equipment and the metals and the supplies that you need to build all these things. And power demand is going up. And when power demand goes up, that means there's a bunch of reasons for it. Power prices just go up, right? For a bunch of reasons. So if power prices are up, the input costs go up, and you start to see inflation. Now, I think it's worth the investment, right? I think there's a sort of noble end game with this in terms of the efficiencies that my colleagues here have been describing of like what all this can do. But yeah, we're using a lot of power. We're probably taking a step backwards or 2 step backwards in our sort of path around decarbonization, and we're using an incredible amount of water for all of these data centers. So yeah, things are getting more expensive, but I also think you'll find efficiencies in the economy and around this that'll like more than overcome it. I think it's a worthy, noble cause.
My response to you is build more. So we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you, everybody, so much.